Welcome to this episode of the Ryan Casey Podcast, A Journey Within. Today we're excited to explore Emily Mingrone's captivating culinary journey, from her humble beginnings operating a deli to impressive success at her restaurant, Tavern State and Fairhaven Oyster Co. Emily's story is filled with passion and innovation. Learn how she earned the prestigious Newcomer of the Year award and adapted to the challenges during the pandemic with the launch of her butcher shop, Provisions on State. Join us as we dive into Emily's culinary journey and her adventure, from her appearances on the Food Network to her cherished moments at the dog park with her loyal companion, Lulu. This is Emily, and here is her journey. Emily, we've all been there, right? It's like a Friday night, you have a couple drinks with your friends, you're having a good time, and you're like, you know what? We should open up a restaurant. We should do that. Everyone has these crazy ideas. They do it. Now you had this crazy idea and you have stuck with it. So how do we get here? How are we sitting here in your restaurant today?
Well, there was many steps to get here. And I do want to address the point really quickly about people just having the idea to open a restaurant and then thinking they can do it. It's a lot harder than it seems. Mm-hmm. And statistically, I don't remember the number, but X amount of restaurants that open fail within the first year. Yep. And that makes it very difficult to get financing and et cetera, et cetera. And the reason I believe that's true is because most people just do it for fun, or they think it's going to be easy or like a place to hang out with their friends, but they don't have the skill set or the experience to back it up. So for me, I've been cooking since I was like a kid, basically. My dad's a chef, and so when I was in high school, he had a deli, and that's where I kind of first started getting my hands on food. We would do catering and stuff.
And did you feel like, you see it all the time, right? It's like there's movies and shows about it. I want my son, daughter to continue the family business. And they're like, no, Dad, I'm heading back to college. I'm going to become a doctor.
Yeah.
So did that cross your mind at all?
I went through so many waves. In high school, I worked for him, and then I left because I was like, I don't want to be in the family business. I don't want to do this, and I just wanted to do something different, or I thought I needed to be an adult and get into corporate America, and so I had some corporate jobs and stuff throughout my early 20s until I realized it just was soul draining, and I needed to do something that was going to be fulfilling for me. So as I bounced around different restaurants and trying to, there's a preface to that, which I'll explain in a minute, but I did go back to try and work for my dad when I was in my mid to late 20s. I'm like, okay, maybe I do want to take over the family business. I wanted something that was my own. Simultaneously, I got a call from a local chef that I had built a relationship with, and he was looking for someone to run his kitchen. So I had to break my dad's heart second time. And I was just like, we had a real conversation about it, and I'm like, I have this opportunity. When I was working for my dad, it was great, but it wasn't right for me. It wasn't enough, and I hate to say that, but I knew that there was more for me out there. And following that instinct, which was very scary, was the starting point for all of this.
Now, let me ask you this, more of putting my real estate hat on. There are times where I tell stories about real estate, and sometimes doing it during a good market, a bad market. Is there that with restaurants as well, where it's, this, whatever, people tell, oh, let me tell you the price of gas during 74 and all this. Are there times where restaurants are we're in the golden age, or these are the good times?
It's literally always a bad time.
It's always a bad time. No, yeah.
Well, and it's not that's not the cynic in me. It's the reality of it, and it's always challenging because prices are always fluctuating, coinciding with inflation. Not only the food, but the labor costs, and cost of living goes up for me. Cost of living goes up for my clientele. Cost of living goes up for my staff, and all of those things contribute to the cost going up on my bottom line. But I also have to be conscious about my price point because the clientele's cost of living is high. So it's where do you draw the line where you can have a good profit margin on your product, but also still make sure it's attractive and attainable for the people that are walking in the door.
I was just trying to set the stage when you're having this conversation with your father, where if it was a different time then than it is now. I'm sure it is in a sense, right? So you kind of tell your dad, second time, this is what I'm going to do, and was it it go smooth? They give you a blessing?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's been the one I call, all throughout my journey with culinary stuff, even back in the day before I was doing it professionally, cooking questions, give them a buzz. And I was so terrified to have this conversation. But my dad's like super easygoing and like he understands. Of course, he was disappointed, because he wanted me to take this business over because without me, it was just going to die. And he was ready to move on. And it does have a happy ending. Now he works here and he helps prep in the mornings and it's kind of like full circle.
That stuff always seems to work out, right? Yeah.
Well, and staying true to yourself too, because some people would have just sort of either begrudgingly or unknowingly submitted to that path and then later in life wonder why they're unhappy or not fulfilled but never really pinpointing that it was that one decision that put them in this spot anyways. And that's something I've always been attuned to. I have like really strong internal senses, intuition, a lot of anxiety, but the anxiety is usually like really telling. So when I was working there, I was just like, I love my dad, I love my family, I love this business, but it's not it, Yeah. And so then having the guts to make those hard choices, and then after enough hard choices, they just become natural.
That's what I was about to say. After a while, we'll use this theme. This can be the episode. As heavy is the head that wears the crown, right? So when you start making those tough choices that most people do not make, you start to wear that crown. And then as you make more decisions, the crown becomes heavier, and then you have also more of a following, right?
Right. It becomes heavier, but in a way there's a certain level of lightness that eventually, I haven't found it yet, but the hard decisions become easier because you have more self-trust because the prior hard decisions have proven to be the right ones. And then everything gets back to baseline, and then it's like, okay, I'm faced with another hard decision. And sometimes I prolong the decision or the conversation to a point that's self-sacrificial. And then it's like, no, okay, my experience and my intuition have led me here. So I know this is the right decision. I just have to do it. And I have to trust myself. And I have to know that I am worth making this decision because it's going to make my long-term better, easier, more fruitful, whatever it is.
And every decision doesn't always have to be right. Like it can't always be right. Like you said, like you made that decision, you felt bad, but look where your dad is now, right? So eventually, sometimes even when it doesn't feel like it's the right decision, or things change. So then, so where would we leave off? So your dad, you tell him, you go work for the chef, and then what's happening?
So the chef that courted me during that time period, prior to working for my dad, I was working at a butcher shop. Now I own one, which is very awesome. But I was a butcher shop that then expanded into a food service program. So I spearheaded that. I was doing chef's tastings and stuff. And I built a relationship with the chef who later courted me because he was a wholesale customer at the shop. He runs a restaurant in Norwalk. He's been the old timer. He's been there for 20 years. And I had like severe imposter syndrome when this call came in. I'm like, I don't have the experience. I'm not ready. Just like the negative self-talk, but he saw something in me and was persistent because I said no the first 3 times.
So let's go to, how did you first meet this person? And let's talk about do you know what he said that he saw in you, like what it was?
No, he's like kind of a hard ass and he's a great guy, but I think he just needed someone to fill that spot. He knew I had enough experience running a kitchen, not of the caliber or volume that he was doing at his restaurant, but I saw this guy nearly every day when he would pick up meat at the shop that I was working at. And we were just buddies, like we would just talk about industry stuff, and she's like, I got something for you. I'm like, please, I got something for you. And I'm like, I don't know. And so I always operate with the mentality kind of like, what do I have to lose? So I took a meeting with him. My partner at the time didn't want me to go back to restaurant life because of the hours and the commitment and all of that. And at that point, I wasn't sure if I wanted to have a family and do the 9-to-5 route or do this thing that really makes me happy, but I'm terrified of. So I tried both. When I was doing the 9-to-5 thing, I was riddled with anxiety and just like I felt like unfulfilled. So I met with this guy. He made me an offer. And I was thinking about it. And then I started fantasizing about what my future could look like if I could overcome my fear. And so I made the leap into running this kitchen, and like literally I'm like on Reddit, like in imposter syndrome threads. I'm like, I can't do it. I'm like just scared of being perceived almost in any way.
Right.
And I was seeing a therapist at the time, and she's just like, Emily, he's not better than you. He's just further along in his career. And so once I changed my mindset to that, it helped my insecurity a little.
But there's going to be something said, like going back to that initial meeting, when you first talked to this gentleman, like there must have been something. Was it, you just were like, I'm always going to have a positive attitude. I'm going to really work on communication. There was something that made a click.
It was just personal evolution almost. Like, so there's a long timeline of my career steps. Prior to everything that I talked about just now, I was at a restaurant in New Haven right after I went to like a community college for culinary education. Once I made the decision to leave corporate America, make a commitment to cooking, I went to a community college. And then while I was in school, I got a job at a restaurant in New Haven with no experience in that regard. And it was tough. I mean, they were hard on me. And what I knew about restaurants is that is the way it is. And so, although I learned a lot there, I think it kind of stunted my confidence, because it's like, the old mentality is sort of like military-esque. It's like bring you down so they can build you up. But a sensitive person like me, I mean, I have a pretty thick skin, but it made me so self-conscious to fail or to do something incorrectly that later in life when I went to go work for this guy, I still felt like that young person that was in that kitchen. Mm-hmm. So overcoming that was a really big deal, and it was really hard.
Yeah.
Because I could have easily said no, succumbed to my fear, been in a boring life that I hated. And unfortunately, I feel like a lot of people do that.
Yeah.
And it's sad because people have potential if they just tune into their inner voice. It's like, no, what is going to make me happy?
Yeah.
Or fulfilled or excited. And like the fear is just part of it.
Yeah.
Just living with it, working with it, overcoming it. But it's a risk tolerance.
It really is, right? It's really kind of finding that balance, because I said the same thing to you. Like, wow, there's this fear. But the fear is also what I need in order to do it, I think anyone who's listening, who's either want to become a realtor, chef, open up their own restaurant, it never gets easier as it goes on. I mean, it's amazing what you, because I'm in situations too, I'm like, oh, I can't believe I get to do this. This is so cool. I never thought I'd be in this situation, right? From the time that you said to your dad, this is what's going on, and you're in school, right? You hear like people all the time, like, oh, I went to community college, and now here I am. So why is it that, like what happened? What was the difference during college or during this time, like the drive?
It was like, well, let me just do the brief timeline.
Yeah.
Because it changed throughout the whole journey. So like I worked at the deli in high school. Then I went to corporate America for like a while. I was probably working in corporate jobs for like 5 years. So at that point, I'm like, 24-ish, 25. But I was always working in restaurants on the side, like bartending and stuff. And I loved the atmosphere. It made me happy. I liked the engagement. I liked that it was ever changing. And then again, while being in my corporate jobs, I'm like, there's something to this dynamic here. This is what's making me happy. But I don't want to wait tables. I don't like people that much. I mean, so what does that mean? And I rejected the idea of cooking early on just because I didn't want to follow in my dad's footsteps, not for any other reason than I was like, I want to make my own path. But then in trying to do that, it just brought me right back to where honestly, my bloodline and my genes, like, it's in my blood.
It's not that you don't like people. Is that you only have so much time for the correct ones.
Yeah.
Like
bandwidth, emotional bandwidth.
Even if it's relationship, it's family, it's friends, it's for work, you only have so much time. So when you meet people, and you're running this thing, I know, like you're running this, you have to be with people that, we always have to work with people that we don't like. But if people are coming to work, like, you need to mesh, and you have to find the right people, and that's like the most. Especially if you want to grow something large, you're going to need other people. You can't do it on your own.
Well, and that's the thing. I guess I should say, it's not that I don't like people. I like my people. The general public is what stresses me the hell out.
It stresses everyone out, yeah.
So, like, waiting tables, working the front of the house, like, you never know who you're going to get. People are so unreasonable most of the time, and it's just like, ugh, I can't. It's draining to me.
Yeah.
because I am an authentic person, so those surface interactions over a period of time really drain my barometer.
Yeah.
But I knew I wanted to be in restaurants, so that's when I made the decision to go to culinary school. And then from there, I worked at all these other restaurants, decided that I was going to try and work for my dad because my partner wanted me to do it like 9 to 5 thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went back to restaurants. So the drive was always there. And then once I realized that, well, I like the continual evolution. There's always room to be better every day in this business, regardless of what facet of it is.
Mm-hmm.
And like integrity, I guess. Like I never just wanted to do a job. I wanted to do something that was meaningful to me and others. And in this business, there's like, it's meaningful to me. I have a team of people that it's meaningful to, that I teach and enrich, and like they work hard for me. And then the guests are fulfilled because the food is really amazing. And then again, I get personally fulfilled when we get the accolades. And so it's like this big organism that exists, and nothing before was ever enough for me.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's the thing, when you're genuine, and there's a lot of, especially, I'm not sure how it is in the restaurant world, in real estate, you don't have to go to high school in order to become a realtor, so unfortunately there's some people that, well, in any industry, they shouldn't be doing, and I'm always a very genuine person. It's the same thing, and it's a blessing and it's a curse, because sometimes, if I don't feel like that other person's being genuine, I can become very defensive, right? Like I will say, hey, like, look, like, I always want everything to be fair. I want to see people succeed. Like, I don't care if they're like my main competition, because if you're doing well, then I'm going to try to do better. It's like, that's what you want. And when people aren't like that, it is very tough to trust, because like everything, and this is only one of, people saw the intro, they're going to see all the information. Like, you have put so much hard work into doing this that you have to put people around you that you feel are genuine and they're trustworthy.
Well, and that's the thing. That's been another journey, is just getting a core staff that has the same attitude, vision, etc. And we don't have to be exactly the same,
No.
but I've now attracted people that care about this business generally, care about my business, care about food, and they're just genuinely good people. We've been through so many different iterations of it, and there was always one or two that didn't quite fit, and they always see themselves out. But then still, that's hard for me, because as you mentioned, fairness, and like, I have a problem being perceived as the bad guy, because a lot of times I know they're wrong.
Yeah.
Like, because if I operate with the best intentions and I do things with integrity, but you don't have a full enough vision of yourself to recognize where your shortcomings are, you're going to project onto me that I'm the bad one. That whole cycle is something that's hard for me.
They'll never understand. They see the success, they see the Instagram.
People, you're rich. I'm like, what? That's opposite, actually.
Yeah. It's not like they see the success, and I want people to see it. But then I also I put like very genuine like things on there, right? Like all of a sudden I'll see like something weird from like the 90s, like all that. I was like, this is a great theme song. Yeah. Because that's my genuine. I'm not like, I don't want to just.
You're not trying to paint a picture.
I'm not trying to paint. Yeah, I'm like, okay, things are going great. I have all this stuff going on, but I'm still like my genuine self. And I feel like you see people and they just post so much, and you feel bad about yourself, but it's not real. It's not real. And a lot of times I always think like, do people want to work with me that are like that? But I'm like, I don't want to work with someone who isn't like that.
It makes me sad. I mean, I always ask this question. I'm like, do people even know what they're missing, or like how disingenuous they feel, or like, are they just doing what they're supposed to do because are they even aware that they're just going down like this path blindly? But I think this is a whole tangent.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
Like, I think there's like a hierarchy of like human intelligence or awareness, and I think certain people are just predisposed genetically to be like, procreate and blah, 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 do this, and it makes me happy. And that's fine, but it's more of a simple mindset than people like us who have a drive to succeed. And there's this whole thing, I can't remember the categories, but there's different people of like spiritual makeups, and like, I'm a manifesting generator. Yeah. And then there's a couple other ones I can't remember, but it's like, it's a hierarchy, kind of like bees or ants. It's like certain people make shit happen, and other people just are the worker bees, and other people are just like the people that are making humanity
But that's okay. Like there are people that live amazing, wonderful lives, and they are just happy with how they live it. I can think of people, like friends and family members. I just like, no, we're good, right? Like they think, they think we're the crazy ones.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of like, well, you're kind of the crazy ones.
Exactly.
I feel like
you're
like, aren't you missing out? Don't you feel like there's more to this? But to each their own. But then that's the thing. That's where the separation starts to come. So that's how I kind of look at it. So it's like, you have to be at peace a lot of times with just like how it is and just try to make the best of it.
Responding to the chaos of it all and how some people like kind of shut down during that, and we like look for it and seek it out. And so I've been exploring this idea recently too. It's like finding comfortability in the chaos, but like, yes, but also why. And so I don't know about your upbringing and childhood and stuff, but I've been exploring that too, because I'm like, okay, I've always had to find comfort in chaos. So I'm really good at thinking of a million things at once. And my anxious brain tends to be hypervigilant, which is normally a trauma response. But I've used it to my advantage because I'm aware of everything all the time. But at what point, like, it's not sustainable to always be that way.
No.
Because then it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's like you're looking for chaos, you're going to find it because there's always a million wheels turning.
I don't know, real estate, I like houses, but I'll say like it's only about 20% of the job. It's actually working with people, communication, team leading, and all that. So, I mean, I'm not sure if that's how it is in the restaurant. Like I know you had the plans to, you're an amazing chef and we can see all your work, but there's so much more to it. It has nothing to do with food after a while, right?
Well, and that's it. I was just having this conversation, and like I built this from the ground up, and I designed all the menus, I developed the whole thing. But now I have a team in place that helps me with. This is the first year I've had a team in place that can help me with the creative workload. And that was like really important to me to still maintain that for myself because that's what made me happy. And now I was just talking to one of my guys and I'm like, I have my hands in like a lot of other stuff right now outside of the restaurants adjacent, but like, events and doing like my private dinners, podcasts, passively working on a book and like just exploring, number one, how I got here, how I stay here and like what that looks like from like almost, I don't know, a broader perspective.
And I think the thing is, and people ask all the time, they're like, okay, like, we're talking about the first thing you have to do, and I've done this a few times, and it sucks, and I have to do it again probably soon, is you really have to take a step back, and you have to ask yourself some really tough questions.
Something I've really been working on related to, like, your desire to make people laugh is, like, examining, a lot of inner child work. It's like, okay, and I spoke about this recently. It's like, okay, there's Chef Emily that's done all this, and then there's Emily. But are they the same? And if they aren't, then, like, basically we're all trying to feed our inner child.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, right.
So whether it's defense mechanisms or, like, performative behaviors or, like I mentioned before, like my hypervigilance and success was important to me because for a while I attached it to self-worth, but it's separate because I am inherently worthy, which took a long time to learn. So that's like the inner child part, is telling your inner child, like, no, you are worthwhile, you are important, you are this and that. And then the second half was, like when your daughter's being unreasonable. People are fucking unreasonable all the time, whether it's a customer or one of my staff members, but then being the one with experience or different communication skills, knowing how to finesse those instances is probably one of the most important things of being a leader. It's like, okay, seeing people as their inner child almost, and like I'll approach somebody if they're behaving inappropriately or if they did something that was not right. And depending on their response, sometimes it's like a snapshot. Like I can see this person like in there. And I'm like, okay, so they're probably, I won't say this, but I'll use that knowledge to sort of figure out how to communicate with them better. And I think that's what has served me very well in running these businesses.
When you always pull someone aside or if there's a problem, and it's tough because like we're talking about this, when you're in wartime, you're actively, it's going to sound over the top, like you're attacking your goals, you're attacking your vision.
This is funny, I have just to interject war, but also, the game Stratego?
Yeah.
Stratego. It's strategy.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, like, yes, this is in front of me, but it's like, what's the next move? Rather than just like balls to the wall.
Right, yeah.
I mean, during service, when we're putting food out, that's more of a war mentality because we have an organized unit that is doing something together, like in real time.
Yeah.
But the rest of it is just like, okay, I'm going to move this piece, and then I'm going to move this piece, and then, you know.
Right. So do you, I guess a lot of times, do you already have, like, when you have to address something, you address someone, The Art of War, the book, the main thing is the battle is won before it's even fought. Like, do you always feel like, do you take that mentality where you kind of already know what you're going to do? Or is it more you feel stuff out? Because like I said, there's I always kind of compare, my career in business and work. It's like I'm in a war, and then all of a sudden, but I have to also be at peace, where it's kind of like I got to be nice to people, and you got to be that, but your mentality is like, oh, I'm going. So it's like, how do you find that?
That's a great
that
question.
balance?
Well, war feels chaotic to me, and I feel like this is more like a dance, even though it's fucking crazy sometimes.
Yeah.
It's more fluid than that. At times, it definitely does feel like war, but
here's the thing with war, and this is why I think we like war is, I know you say it's chaos because people shoot, but you know what you see the movies, it's like, here's their line, here's our line, I gotta cross this movie, and I gotta get, there's order in a sense, like I know what I have to do. When it's peacetime, you're like, should I not be doing this? Should I be happy? Should I be more pushing? It's just like, it's more, your mind's more open.
And the war thing is, it's an interesting metaphor too, because a lot of times I feel like the point of the fight is lost. And so that's why, I'm trying to skirt this metaphor because it doesn't resonate with me in the way of management. Because yes, sometimes there's war and there's fucking people that I go to war with. But I also never lose sight of my goals. But oftentimes the other person, it's never a clear conflict, if that makes sense. And if it is, it often requires more nuance to kind of get to where you need to go. And so that makes me a skilled leader, because I can be faced with something and the other person might not have the knowledge or skills to
do that,
to fight me or whatever you want to say. And I'm like, no, because, and then I'll hear them out. And this is something I'm working on, because I've been told I can be dismissive in relationships, but in a hierarchical environment, like, I'm the expert, and this is why this is not okay, and this is what I want to see from you. But how are you feeling? Or one of my favorite phrases lately is, do you agree? Or do you see what I'm saying? Like, just giving them the opportunity to either agree, disagree, or prove their point as well. And only with the team I have now could I say that I would allow that in, because there's been some assholes.
And that's the thing too, and I know, a lot of times I have friends, I'm like, hey, you wouldn't like me too much if we work together, because I do the same thing. If I don't feel like the vibes, when I make a move on stuff where it's like, yeah, you're gone, and
same here.
I never have to be in that position. There's times where I see it all the time, like, that person be long gone, this person wouldn't have had a shot, wouldn't have a chance, because I'm always, it's like, you kind of, like you said, you can kind of see how it's going to mesh, and like, you will have realtors all the time, and they're like, oh, I want to be the next Ryan Serhant on Bravo and all this, and then they get to actually see what's going on, and they're like, oh, they don't really want to do it, and they don't have to make this money, right? Like, I always like the realtors, or working with the realtors, or seeing, cheering them on, that had their backs up against a wall, and they're kind of, that's how I did it, it was like my back was up against the wall. I didn't really have comfort, and then as I started making more promises, like, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, the more pressure that comes on. But that pressure, if you don't have something else,
gasoline on the fire.
Yeah, you don't go anywhere.
No, and that's an interesting point too, because I resonate with that very strongly. It's like, to start from the ground up, I was making no money and I had to figure it out. I always have had to figure it out. And when you mention the people that just want to be on the shows, it's like, I get so many of the culinary grads now that just are like, they don't understand the work that goes in, or the work that I put in. And people see me, in the media, whatever. Somebody mentioned, like, they were trying to sell me a freaking electronic billboard, and my manager had the conversation on my behalf, and she's like, it's not really in the cards financially right now. And the lady goes, what do you mean? She has 3 businesses. It's like, yeah, exactly. I'm fucking broke. But it's like the cogs in the wheel are turning. I get paid a salary. My people get paid, the bills get paid, but it's not like the most profitable institution to be in. No. And like, I've clawed my way here very deliberately and thoughtfully, because I followed my instincts, and because I made hard decisions, because I had hard conversations.
And you have some high anxiety moments too, where you're kind of like,
But my back is up against the wall all the time. So I know that feeling. So I will always make those decisions. I mean, fucking COVID happened when we were open for 9 months.
And this is why I wanted to do this podcast. They see the stuff, but they don't truly understand. They're like, oh, tell me about the awards you want. What's your best dish? And that's not what I want to do at all.
Well, and then it's like, is it ever enough though? In that same breath, it's like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, it's tough because then what happens when you have to keep going?
And you'll always turn it back around. That's what people like us do, just because failure is not an option.
It's not. It's
and like
not.
whatever, I mean, you will fail many times, but failure as a general sense and like white flag is not an option. So whatever I have to do to make sure that that doesn't happen, I'll have 20 micro failures, but I'll have that win.
And I think that's because you come to a point where it's so far, and you never hear like people interview, I did everything I could. I was like, failure is not an option, and I failed. You never hear those stories, ever. Right? Like people have sometimes bad luck and things happen, but then they end up doing something else with that bad luck.
Exactly.
Those stories, but you never hear someone like, yeah, you know what? I'm the guy that gave 100% and it didn't work out. Something works out. I mean, it might be something small, but all of a sudden it can come into something large.
Yeah, you have to be tenacious and inventive and innovative is the word I wanted to use.
Trust me. You'll see me use, and my Boston accent comes out flying out of nowhere, so it's fine.
And just not scared. I mean, well, yes, be scared, but don't let it deter you. And I keep saying it, but my favorite thing is risk tolerance. And my past partner years ago was no risk tolerance. And I'm just like, but why? And I wanted to open a restaurant, and she's like, I don't care as long as you can pay the mortgage. And it was just like rude. And I was like, okay, well, you don't see my vision. You don't see what I'm capable of and what I want to do. So whatever. It's.
What has separated you, would you say, from the rest of the pattern? What's been the secret sauce? No pun intended.
Tenacity. I think a lot of people give up too soon and they don't push through the discomfort. They succumb to it, and that's like not what you should do.
Did you ever feel like you were going to give up?
No, I've been very challenged and very uncomfortable and anxious. I mean, I remember when I had my first kitchen job, like I was so anxious, and I was walking to work, I would put music on my headphones that would like kind of take me out of my head. But every day it was just stressful, and I wanted it to not be stressful anymore. And I mean, it still is in a different way, but it was like I wanted to enrich my skill set. I knew what I had to do so that the anxiety would lessen, and I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess it's just pushing through the discomfort. And
so to get here, there had to be, you're doing some stuff that.
I know. And this is an age-old question. I don't reflect as often as I should. And so I want to really think about this.
Because I think you have to, because you do get like, you turn around and you're like, how did I get here? I don't know. You're like, how did I end up here? And then you go back and it's kind of like, you forget. And sometimes you don't want to go back because you do look at the insecure, the craziness, that.
It was just like this inner knowing almost. I can't really explain it. It was just like, I need to do this. And then like, so before I found this venue, I was looking for like 2 years and nothing like felt right and nothing was the right price point. And then it was actually the same when I found the house. But I saw this listing and I felt it. And I was like, that's the one, I have to have it. And I came in here, and I mean, I was a regular here years ago before when it was something else. And I was like, I have to have it. And I walked in, I was like, this is Tavern, this is Tavern. And I was with that ex at the same time, and she did not share my excitement at all. It was almost like kind of squashing my excitement. But we drove away from here, and I was just like, it was just like locked in. And so then I was just like, okay, now how do I make it happen? And I hit so many roadblocks because I'm self-financed, and I'm not like, I don't come from money or anything.
Right, yeah.
So I had to be creative to get the financing I need to get the key money and then to do it all. But I just kept pushing. Every roadblock, I just kept pushing until I got there.
Have you noticed that you're a little bit more, because I'm the type of person, I see something sometimes, I'm like, oh, and I will just be indulgent in a day.
That just happened when we looked at that restaurant downtown, and I wanted it so badly. I still do. I love that venue, but they're giving us a hard time. And so I take that as I'm not going to force anything.
And you have to. And you have to, even if it's like, and it's tough because you always want what you can't have. But yeah, you do have to. Same thing with buyers and sellers, like they always want a house that they that they lose or they can't get, but it wasn't the right one. We always end up
Just
finding something
and we
better.
looked at the house where the guy disappeared and all that
Oh
stuff.
yeah,
and
remember that's the first. Yeah, the first.
I was like, okay.
You thought it was like Lionel, like he's gone. You're like,
Yeah.
what do you mean? The agent, he disappeared. No one can find
But
him.
that wasn't the right house. My
Yeah.
house now is perfect. I love it. It's
Yeah.
8 minutes from all my businesses. It just feels good to be there. I love it. I never expected to be in that area in a freaking 200-year-old house, but I literally love it. And so I think also people sometimes may get stuck on the things that don't work out instead of just being open to the things that are coming.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's almost like receive it. It's out there.
Exactly.
It's out there. You got to be looking for it a little bit, you know.
And you have to make
open.
space.
You have to make space for it. But, like right now, a lot of times things aren't coming my way. It's because I'm not open. I'm just so focused in the now, and, you're not being open. People might be like, oh, that's crazy, and this and that. It's like, no, when you think differently, you have a different smile, you have a different tone. Things change with people, you know what I mean? And it's tough, though. But, do you feel like sometimes, though, it's like, it's okay. Like, you have to, for the peaks, you got to have the valleys, right?
Well, yes, it's completely cyclical. And I mentioned earlier that I'm a bit of a nihilist in certain aspects because it's like nothing matters. But what I mean by that is like, what do I have to lose? I mean, a lot. But we're stardust, like just when you think of it like that. So that's one facet. And then vaguely nihilistic, but also there's a certain level of optimism. I'm not an optimist by nature, but it's almost like open-mindedness somehow mixed with that. So it's like nothing matters. So whatever happens is okay.
Yeah.
Even if it's bad, because there will be good to offset it eventually. Yeah. Being open to it, and then also planting the seeds along the way so that you can sow them when the time is right, and they'll come back to you.
What is the greatest advice you could give to someone about life? Not about cooking, or it could be 2 things, it could be 3 things.
Well, the first thing popped into my head when you said that is that it gets better. Because there's been so many dark points in my life where I'm just like stuck and I didn't know what to do. And like, it will always get better as long as you are moving. And like, if something doesn't feel right, explore something else, and like, trust your instincts. Like, they're more powerful than you know, but you have to learn how to tune into them. I was in one of the books I'm reading right now. It was really interesting note about the difference between intrusive thoughts and intuitive thoughts. So intuitive thoughts can only happen when you're being faced with something, like in the present. So like when I said I walked in here and I feel it, that's great. Intrusive thoughts are more like when I leave here and I'm like, what am I doing? That's crazy. It's the wrong idea. That's not a real thought because it's not based in anything. And like your gut is attached to your brain, and it actually realizes things before your brain does. So the gut feeling is very real, and people should trust that. And sometimes it exhibits as anxiety, but maybe your body is trying to tell you something.
Yeah, that's the thing too. Do you think it's okay to go through that? Because I think that's the thing too, and that's why I love the conversation, is because it's a genuine conversation. It's the struggle. It's not just the success. And you see people all the time, like I said, they're like, oh, they're always happy. They always have like the energy. I'm like, man, how do these people have that all the time? But I mean, I'm guessing everyone is human, right? Everyone's human. They go through cycles where I don't care. I mean, unless they're just like, but to be that excited, you have to experience, because what would you know what happiness is if you didn't know what sadness was, right? So you have to always be there. I don't think it ever goes away. I don't think it.
Well, and I speculate too, I read something that I don't remember the percentage, but only a percentage of people have an internal dialogue. Like, first of all, what are the rest of them doing? So like, I think the lack of internal dialogue, I don't know if it's like genetic or if it's based on intelligence, but something about that, I think, like the people that are just always happy, maybe they don't have an internal dialogue, and maybe they're just happy just existing. And the people that do have an internal dialogue, I think, are more prone to like depression and anxiety because we're thinking and the people that think and do, and we got to put that energy somewhere.
Yeah, and that's the same thing. Like it's a nervous energy, but it's what, going back to the child, I always had nervous energy, but it's what I thrive off of.
And it's almost like renaming it. It's like I do too, and I'm like, okay, well, no, it's purposeful. This is what I need and want to do. It's not like I just did this just because. I've tried a million different things and they weren't right. And so now it's like, okay, anxiety here is different. Like when I'm in the moment, it's like, okay, it's anxiety is situational because it's like, okay, we got to do all this, but it's like the rest of my soul is calm
It's calm. I think when
My friends laugh at me.
No, and I think that's okay. I love when people laugh because usually I always say when people are laughing, you're doing something right all the time. And I feel bad because they laugh and they don't get it, but you get it.
Someone called me monetized Mingrone the other day as a joke because I'm just like, you can make money off that. Just you gotta do that.
Yeah.
But then it's also disheartening for myself because I'm like, can I ever just have a hobby that I don't want to try and sell?
Trying to sell, but that's kind of like what drives you. And I think a lot of times when you're talking about like when people are like, oh, should I try to do this? I think there are many people that are just like, no, I don't want to do this. They never have the thought about doing something. This is what they want to do. They rather just work for someone else and give. And like I said, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yes, and there's like this fear of vulnerability, and I had it for a really long time. And I think that's why I had the imposter syndrome, and I was scared to not know everything I needed to know. And I think that's why a lot of people in creative fields, especially, don't ever take the leap because they're so scared of being exposed or raw or vulnerable. But like, what else is there if not that?
Right.
And like, what do you have to gain by like keeping it all? Everybody has something to share.
Yeah.
Just like not being scared of it. The culture that we live in, it's disheartening. It makes me sad for the people that are too scared.
Is there one day that you remember here where you kind of felt like you made it, or it was kind of like you made the right choice? Or what is it? Or is it like customers smiling? Is it the recognition? I mean, there's got to be that too. Like, I mean, I'm doing this podcast to become more recognized and more business, but you want to help people. So that's why it always goes back to the people.
It's kind of like all of it. I mean, I wish there were one moment that I could say, but there's many moments up until now. Like the recognition is great. I was the first woman to win Chef of the Year, which was extremely validating and exciting. And I like the awards, but it's not it. One moment that stood out to me recently. Well, my people are very important to me, my guests and my staff. And I've curated this group of people and this culture that multiple times I've been approached to be thanked for the employment culture that I've created. Because it's inclusive and it's kind and nurturing, but we take what we do seriously and we don't take any shit. And if you're doing something wrong, we will coach you. But it's a loving atmosphere. And so...
And you don't have too much of that.
It doesn't exist in this
industry. And sometimes you can believe that's how it is, and it's actually, because everyone's going to be like, oh, it's a family here. But you kind of know right off the bat, you know, like, it's a feeling, Well,
and so every year we have a staff outing, and I always make a slideshow for everybody. And normally I'd show it at whatever venue we have the outing. This year I didn't feel like, because it's pressure on me to execute, and I just wanted to have fun. So I did a separate event here a couple weeks later with the slideshow. The love in this room, when the slideshow was playing up there on the projector, it was palpable. And I'm like standing over there and I'm just like looking around at all these people that work very hard for me and for themselves and that have this passion and this drive and they make this thing tick. And I felt immense pride.
And do you know how hard that is to do? Like, I mean, not just to do this, but then also have the people to believe in you. Because like I said, most people won't. Most people rather kind of say you're crazy and they laugh at you because... And there's still that person that will still say, even after you do it, that you can't do it. And it's just like, but you know what? I need those people. I need those people around me to prove them wrong because I'm like, you know, what else? And it's sad. Like you said, the word is sad because it's going to pass. Time's going to pass anyways, you know? So why is it that, you know, other people can do it and I can't, you can't sort of thing? What have you learned about people? Either the most important thing, the number one lesson, if it's coming with someone that's sitting here, when it comes to people, your staff, like what's the greatest advice you can give?
Well, people show you who they are, and I have made excuses for people for too long and excused their behavior for too long to my own detriment. And we've been through a lot of transitions this past year specifically. And at this stage, you know, there's been people that have taken advantage of me and my kindness and my generosity. And so recognizing that, I wish I recognized, I'm speaking about one situation in particular, and I wish I recognized it earlier.
But that goes back to your peace and war thing.
Well,
because you were at peace and maybe you're like, I should have went to war. You know, but then you don't want to be at war either and screaming at like, you know, a teenager who's bussing tables, you know what I mean?
But then I'm at war with myself. It was a manager that wasn't working. And I was at war with myself trying to figure out what to do about this. And it was detrimental to me because I'm like watching this person like no matter how many meetings, how many interactions, nothing was improving. And then I'm just like seething, and I'm like, I am suffering now because of you. But it's not because of you, it's because I'm not making a decision regarding you. And so once I kind of did that, I'm like, okay, so know your worth, know your power, and that's
Because there's always two sides to everything. I don't care if it has to do with religion, politics, or whatever. If you are born in a different situation, you're going to see things differently, right? Like, is that kind of like how it is here too? Like, it's, well, not here, but I mean, like, is that how people kind of, you see both sides of it, and you kind of.
it depends. When I'm like mediating, if like there's two people that are in a disagreement in the restaurant and I'm the leader in the room, I can be like, okay, I see where you're coming from. I see where you're coming from. Most times, just based on the conversations I'm naturally inclined to have as a manager, it's usually me leading and being like coaching.
But it has to be.
Yeah.
You, like I said, you put on the crown, and
Because my vision is what created all this, so I obviously.
It's a lonely path.
Yeah.
It's a lonely path doing this sometimes. Doesn't matter, if you have wife, kids, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever's happening. It's a lonely path when it's tough because there's no one there to help you. There's no one there to save you. I don't talk to my wife about it because she doesn't have no clue what's going on. And neither does she care, nor should she, right? Like my job is, and this is where that heavy that wears a crown, she doesn't care if I lose all the deals or everything falls apart. She's like, where is the money for the mortgage? Where's the money for the food? Where's that? So it just kind of comes with it. But I put us in that situation. I'm the one that was in charge where I'm going to build us a house. And I'm willing to take the responsibility and accountability. Most people are not willing to.
Accountability is a big one.
Yeah.
Most people either don't have the awareness or accountability is such a that's hard for me as a manager. I'm always accountable for my mistakes. There's other people that will either make excuses or I don't care. Like, just, I'm telling you that this is wrong. Just be accountable and move forward. That's it.
Yeah.
It's not a dig to your character. It's a product. Let's move forward. Like, this is wrong. Fix it and move on. And it's a lot with the young cooks. They're just like, there's always an excuse. I'm like, I don't care. Just fix it. Like,
just do it.
This is the way it needs to be. And it's hard.
It's tough because it's, even if you don't feel like you're wrong, is it just like when you're in a certain place, like if I'm like meeting with someone that's doing 230 million, he says, hey, I'm doing something wrong, I'm going to listen to him. I might think right off the bat, like, nah, you're wrong. You don't know what you're talking about. Okay, well, let me take a look. Just let me take a look. Sometimes you're in the moment and you're all flustered and you can say, like a lot of times I say, hey, let me cool off and then I'll take a look. And I think it's the same thing. I think people are afraid to see what's actually there when they become accountable.
Well, because the defense mechanism is the first reaction.
Because now they don't have, and I think that's the biggest thing, because when you put yourself out there and you're sounding accountable, you don't have excuses anymore. So it's generally you. Like that was always my biggest thing. It's kind of like, well, if I'm not funny and I'm making people laugh, I'm not doing the jokes, are people going to like me for me? Because now that's me that they're criticizing. It's not the comedian Ryan who's quick with a joke. Light up your smoke. There's someplace you'd rather be.
Hey, that's my favorite song.
Right? So we can find a way to put that in here. Emily, thank you so much. It seems like we could just go on and on and on. And I see like a lot of whiskey right there too. And I'm like, we're just going to really go on and on.
Fireside chats.
But I think the thing is, we're just starting this podcast and we love what we do. I mean, if we didn't, we wouldn't be here.
Absolutely. It's just the self-exploratory nature of it and introspection that's very important to future growth and accountability and just knowing who you are so you know how to move forward for yourself and others, especially in business.
Really quick, last thing. The year is 2124. It's 100 years. We're all gone. There's a family member watching this right now. What do you want them to know? Like, what would you want to tell them?
I'm a bad bitch.
Yes! No! Throw the money and flip the table.
No, don't take no for an answer. And it's like all these freaking cliches, but where there's a will, there's a way. And that's like my main thing. Like, don't stop trying. It will always happen.
It always works out, yeah.
Exactly, and knowing when to give yourself grace and rest because you are not a machine as badly as you want to be. I'm talking to myself, but sometimes I'm tired and I'm just like, come on, why are you so tired? Get a grip, come on, you got to keep going. And it's like, no, rest is equally as important, if not more so.
It's what gives us meaning and it's also what makes us tired.
Yeah.
But you can't live without it. I know. I hear. All right, Emily, thank you so much. We'll be back definitely for sure. I'm starting to get hungry. Yeah. Maybe a plate or something. All right. Till next time, guys.
Thank you.